Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to a very, very exciting announcement for the Hospital for Sick Children. I was telling a couple of people that it feels nice to put a suit back on again. It's been a long time, and we are just thrilled that you could join us. Now, we are making sure that people stay masked through the entire event. Speakers, when you come up, we would like you to take off your mask, sanitize your hands, and then feel free to make your remarks, and then we'll wipe down the podium before the next speaker comes up. There are decals around the terrace, and would ask you to stand on them again to practice a bit of social distancing if you could. As you can imagine, we take all of these public health issues very, very seriously at SickKids. I'm Ted Gerard. I'm CEO of SickKids Foundation, and it is our practice at SickKids that before we begin any formal proceedings, we'd like to do an Indigenous land acknowledgement, which I will do now. For thousands of years, the land on which SickKids sits has been the traditional lands of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, Toronto is home to Indigenous peoples from all across Turtle Island. SickKids is committed to building relationships with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and is grateful for the opportunity to share this land in caring for children and their families. Thank you. Well, I am sure all of you in this room have a story of somebody that you know that has been touched by a traumatic brain injury, a concussion, a mental health related issue, anxiety, depression, potentially even suicide. I know I look after a brother who has been in my care for many, many years, who has both agoraphobia, meaning he doesn't like crowds of people, and he's bipolar. And it's my responsibility to look after him. About 4 years ago, my niece, India, had to be raced down to SickKids because every organ in her body was failing, and that was because she suffered an eating disorder called anorexia. And so these issues are ones that touch us all personally and poignantly. And I think it's why, the announcement that we are going to make today is so very, very special. And it is my pleasure and honor to acknowledge one man in particular and his family for a transformational investment in brain and mental health that will forever change and shape the future of our kids. And the man I'm speaking of is Garry Hurvitz, who is an internationally successful entrepreneur and Toronto philanthropist. Garry knows well the importance of investing in brain and mental health. He'll be sharing his own personal connection and experience in a few moments. But first, and on behalf of Ronnie Cohn, CEO for the Hospital for Sick Children, Rob Pritchard, Chair of the Board of the Hospital for Sick Children Board of Trustees, Sonia Baxendale, Chair of the Board of SickKids Foundation, I am thrilled to be able to announce today that Garry has donated $50 million to the Hospital for Sick Children. This incredibly generous gift will support the Garry Hurvitz Center for Mental Health and the Garry Hurvitz Center for Community Mental Health at SickKids. And I think we have a reveal. Indeed we do. The Garry Hurvitz Center for Community Mental Health and the Garry Hurvitz Center for Brain and Mental Health. Garry, on behalf of all of us who are assembled here this morning, thank you. Your philanthropic generosity and your leadership is truly remarkable. And I'm ecstatic that we can all be here today for this milestone in the life of the Hospital for Sick Children. This momentous donation is going to enable so much. It is going to bring together a critical mass of professionals from all disciplines to tackle the brain's unparalleled complexity. It's going to fuel groundbreaking research, education, and care to transform outcomes for children and youth affected by some of the greatest challenges in child and adult health. And I know I speak on behalf of everybody, Garry, not just for those here today, for thanking you for this magnificent commitment. And let me also say thank you to Garry's team that we've had the pleasure of working with over the past several months, who have been superb and exceptional partners in bringing this gift to fruition. Gifts like these don't materialize overnight, and as much as we wish that they would. But I do want to also pay special tribute to 4 individuals from SickKids and to all of our colleagues in the Center for Brain and Mental Health for your efforts in bringing us here today. I want to thank Angela Murphy for her tireless efforts in leading the discussions with Garry and his representatives. I want to thank Marie Bomba, our Director of Foundation Relations at the hospital, who did a lot of the legwork inside the hospital to put together the package of opportunities that we were able to present to Garry. I want to thank Gillian Savigny. Gillian was the head writer who wrote the magnificent briefs and documents that we were able to share with Garry and his family. And I want to thank Mark Goldblum, our General Counsel at SickKids Foundation. I was still getting emails at midnight last night from Mark as we were looking to finalize a few details. These are 4 exceptional staff members of the foundation, and together with our fantastic colleagues at the hospital, it takes this army of people to put together a transformational gift such as this. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce to the podium Dr. Ronnie Cohn, President and CEO of the Hospital for Sick Children, to bring his remarks. And Ronnie, mask off, sanitize, we're good.
All right, thank you, Ted. Welcome, everyone. And I'm starting by going off script at the beginning to say thank you, Garry. Before I thank you for what I'm supposed and want to thank you for, there are a lot of people here who I see for the first time in 18 months in person, and that in itself is something to celebrate. So thank you for that. So good morning, everyone. Ted, I am honored to be here today to celebrate a truly historic event and day for the Garry Hurvitz Center for Brain and Mental Health and the Garry Hurvitz Center for Community Mental Health, but to be honest, most importantly, for our patients and our families. I would like to say, on behalf of the entire SickKids community, thank you, Garry. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for not just an exceedingly generous gift, but for your vision to help us with our vision to advance brain health, mental health of all of the children here in Ontario and across the world and all the youth who are suffering from mental health disorders. With our announcement today, we'll be able to catalyze in what I believe is a truly unprecedented way our fairly ambitious mental health strategy. It will help us to discover, deliver cutting-edge, new precision therapies for these children, and it will help us to share our knowledge with our patients inside and outside of the walls of SickKids, which is something I know you care a lot about, and we care a lot about as well. We for sure wouldn't be here celebrating this event and this historical milestone without the tireless work of a lot of people. I'm trying to see where you are, because we have the executive of the Garry Hurvitz Center for Brain and Mental Health and Community Mental Health here. So I'd like to thank a few people. Dr. Stephen Miller, right there, who has been a partner and friend since 9 years ago when we both arrived at the same time here at SickKids. Dr. Peter Zatmari, where are you? Chris Barther and Jeff Mainland, who is over there. You, together with really an army of passionate and accomplished clinicians, scientists, and educators, have allowed us to build this solid foundation from which we are now poised to achieve what I believe will be unprecedented outcomes in child and youth brain and mental health. But like Ted, I would also like to thank the superstar team of the foundation. Angela, thank you. Marie, you and I are best buddies on an almost weekly basis. Jillian, thank you so much. And really the entire foundation team. Ted, you have a fantastic team that allows us to have celebrations and conversations with visionary people like you, Garry. So thank you very much. So this investment, Garry, is something that is a big deal for our organization, but it's a big deal for me personally. In our conversation, you may remember that together with many of my colleagues at SickKids, we have advocated for the mental health of children and youth throughout the pandemic, because children have been so much harder affected in different ways than many of our adults. And just looking at some of the research we have done, we have seen an increase in depression, an increase in anxiety disorder that has really translated into true impact on our hospital. If you look at numbers between July 2020 and March 21, we had a 30% increase in our admissions to our psychiatric unit. We had a 25% increase in emergency visits just of children who are in mental health crisis, and a 20% increase in urgent care mental health visits. So your gift is going to help us rise to the challenge, not really just during the pandemic, which we unfortunately still have to deal with for a few more months, but during the time of recovery. That's the essential time. We have to ensure that the children who have been affected are not getting only through the pandemic, but will get out of the pandemic. And your gift will help us to get there. On the other side, as a pediatrician and geneticist, I take care of a lot of children with neurological disorders. And while we have lots of scientists working on precision therapies in the laboratory, your gift will help us increase that research and facilitate bringing it to the clinic. And I'm going to go off script one more time. Where is Dr. George Ibrahim? There you are. So I know there are a lot of superstars here, but I want to talk to you about this young superstar, because he took care of one of my patients. Several months ago, he's a neurosurgeon. Several months ago, I got a call from a mother of one of my patients who has a neurological genetic disorder that leads to a lot of behavioral abnormalities, and the mom didn't know what to do with her anymore. I happened to be on clinical service, and she said, well, if you're on service, I'm coming in. So she came to the hospital. She stayed at the hospital several months. And at some point, Dr. Ibrahim offered to implant a device into her brain that could have potentially have a beneficial impact on her behavior. He is doing this for children with other disorders, but felt like maybe it's worth trying in your child. Just 15 minutes ago, he told me she's doing amazing. She starts talking. This is the kind of stuff, Garry, that you help us facilitate and do at scale over the years to come. So thank you, George, for sure too. So with this, let me thank you one more time for your generosity, for supporting so many of our talented young upcoming stars as well as the existing ones. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Lauren thinks of everything, so thank you, Lauren. One of the things that we pride ourselves on, SickKids, and I can tell you that our boards take it very, very seriously, is our accountability responsibility back to donors. That when we say that we're going to do something, we do it, and we get results. And we want to be transparent about it. And I can assure you that our board leadership and our board members watch that performance all the time. And so, Garry, you may recall we talking on the phone about this, but it is a point of pride here at SickKids that we actually work hard to honor the commitments we make to our donors. And I want to invite Rob Pritchard, Chair of the Board of the Hospital for Sick Children, and Sonia Baxendale, Chair of the Board of SickKids Foundation, to come forward and say a few words as well, socially distanced. But Rob and Sonia, please join us.
Well, first of all, thank you everyone for joining us here today for this very, very important announcement. And so let me start by adding my tremendous thank you, Garry, to that of my colleagues. As you've heard, this is really very, very important. It will make a huge difference to the work that we're trying to do at SickKids. So we are tremendously grateful for your support. We began this campaign in 2017 with, at that time, what was the most ambitious goal ever in Canadian healthcare history. We committed to raise $1.5 billion, an unheard of number. And when management first approached the board with this number, even we weren't sure that we were ready to sign up for such a commitment. But you've heard, and you've met, and you've seen some of these great and wonderful, talented individuals across both the hospital and the foundation, and we were convinced that it was achievable. Many said it was an audacious ask, and we said, all the more, bring it on, let's see what we can do. Today, we remain committed and driven to achieving this goal and potentially exceeding the goal. So thank you for helping to contribute to this. To date, this campaign has celebrated its 1 millionth donor. 1 million donors. That is an accomplishment we are incredibly proud of. And we have surpassed $1.3 billion on our path to 1.5 or more. Our vision, as you've heard from Ronnie, is to create a children's hospital for the ages, designed to elevate care by attracting world-class talent, adapting to changing patient volumes, needs, and technology, and ensuring that the diverse and complex patient needs, these young children that come into our care and their families, always feel at home, that they can think of SickKids always as a home away from home. And that is something that we pride ourselves on with every amount of care that we deliver to our patients. So with this new investment in the Garry Hurvitz Center for Brain and Mental Health and the Garry Hurvitz Center for Community Mental Health at SickKids, I am confident that we will achieve all of that and more. SickKids is successful in part because we create community, and because we rely on that community to support one another. Every donor is important, and we are grateful to each and every one of you. With a gift like this from Garry, we can start to see the finish line, but there is much more to be done. I'm asking all of you who know how vital SickKids is to the health of children to build on this momentum, to continue to give. The momentum is tremendous. Thank you, Garry, for this transformational gift. We are so grateful for your visionary leadership and appreciate everything that you are doing to support the hospital. With that, I'd like to now turn over to my friend and colleague, Rob Pritchard, Chair of the Board of Trustees. Sorry, forgot my routine already.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Friends, colleagues, thank you all very much for being here. Garry, I just want to say on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the hospital, the women and men of the hospital, all wonderful people, thank you so much for what you've done with this extraordinarily generous gift today. It's an amazing moment for us at the hospital to have your support. It's equally amazing to have your support for such an important cause, to put your good name and reputation in support of mental health is such an important moment for us. Thank you very much. I want to thank our colleagues at the foundation. The hospital and the foundation work arm in arm as I work arm in arm with Sonia, John Francis, Patsy Anderson, Katie Taylor, and everybody else associated with the campaign. Thank you for what you make possible at the hospital through your exceptional leadership in philanthropy. Garry, this cause is really important. We have amazing people at the hospital who work in this area, and what you're doing will allow us to accelerate that work, expand that work, make that work even more important. Ronnie spoke of neurosurgery. Let me say a word about neurology. This is an overnight success, of course, with this amazing gift on the front page of the Toronto Star today, but it's 25 years in the making. Carter Sneed came to Toronto 25 years ago to lead neurology and had this idea. He passed the baton to Steve Miller 9 years ago to continue it, to create this center and to make the difference your gift is going to make possible. And so it's the Carter Sneeds and the Steve Millers and all of their colleagues who are being brought together with your gift. And these are people who rank with the very best, not just in Canada, they rank with the very best in the world at what they do. They're fantastic people. I happen to know them well personally, and I think you will be thrilled with the work they do, with you, supported by your resources and your inspiration. So thank you for fueling the work of such amazingly good people. I also want to say this is personal for me. I was brought to Canada 70 years ago by my father when he was recruited to be the head of neurology at SickKids, to be the first pediatric neurologist at SickKids. So for him to imagine how far we've come to be where we are today, and to imagine even more so what it could mean as to where we're going tomorrow, Garry, is very personal and very meaningful for not just for the hospital, not just for the men and women who will be part of this effort, but for me as well. So I want to express my personal gratitude to you, in addition to the institutional gratitude of SickKids and the SickKids Foundation for a remarkably generous gift that's going to do a whole lot of good. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Lauren. You know, SickKids is a hospital that has been 145 years in the making. And when you've been around that long, there are legends who have been part of the annals of our great institution. Elizabeth McMaster, who helped found SickKids. John Ross Robertson, who served in the role of board chair longer than anybody and We continue to benefit from his legacy that he set up back in the 1800s. J.P. Bickle, who also left a magnificent legacy to SickKids in 1951 that today has supported our research institute with well over $80 million to date, and we're still climbing. And then there are the modern founders of SickKids, families that you would know well, the Garans, the Rogers, the Labatts, the Gilgans. But now we have a new legend at SickKids, and one who I know will go down in the history book for his superb contribution in philanthropic leadership. And so I'd be honored if you, Garry, came forward and said a few words on behalf of you and the Hervitz family. Again, thank you for this magnificent gift. Ladies and gentlemen, Garry Hurvitz.
Well, good morning to everybody, and thanks to everybody for coming. I mean, these speeches are tough to follow. But what I'd like to do, first of all, is to thank my team, because definitely without them, this would never be possible. I wouldn't be here. My kids, I want to thank everybody at SickKids for all their hard work and all their hard efforts, to my partner, Jennifer. And as you know, I've had my issues with mental health. As a child, 5 years old, had suffered from OCD, where in those days I'd run around 30 times within 2 hours, check the door, check the stove, check this, check that. And my parents would say, "What are you doing?" And I would just tell them, well, it's kind of like a game. You know, one day I'll explain it to you. Because back then, it wasn't something that you talked about. And, you know, growing up where I grew up, it just wasn't something you'd want anybody to know. And as time progressed, I guess when I was about 20, 22, I started suffering from these panic attacks and not knowing what they were, and just trying to figure it out. And then they would pass, and then they would come back. And then that turned into anxiety, and the anxiety turned into depression. So I thought it would be a really good idea to go see somebody and find out what all this is about. So the first couple psychiatrists that I met and saw just kept giving me pills and more pills. And this is going back 45, 46 years ago. And the pills were actually making me worse. So I was very fortunate. As time went on, I found a caregiver, psychiatrist, who actually was interested in me, and we did behavior mod together. He explained the whole thing to me. You may get it the first time, you may get it the second time. It may take 3 months, it may take 6 months, and luckily for me, I got it the first visit. And although, as Karen in the back, I see Karen, would say, you know, Garry, you know, I think it's time for a tune-up. And I think at some point I will, because I've been luckily depression-free the last 15 years. I thank God for that. The anxiety, once in a while it comes to me, but it's always something you got to work on. Sometimes more of a struggle than other, but with the old-fashioned behavior mod that I learned, I still use it, and for the most part, again, it's working. So much for writing out the bullet point speech. Okay, why am I doing this? For me, it's a dream. More than the dream, it's the passion. And more than the passion, it's the legacy. I mean, you put in 18-hour days, 7 days a week in the beginning of the career, you work crazy, and you sometimes get to a point and you say, okay, so I'm here, now what? So for me, this is very, very important to me to have a legacy. I want my children to see that, you know, you can extract from society, but you have to put back in. I want my kids to understand the involvement that one has to do to the community. You just can't take. And as everyone can imagine, my kids grew up very privileged, and thank God I have 3 great kids that I'm very proud of. I'm sure everybody in this room, and everybody has actually touched on the topic, knows someone, whether it's a relative, a cousin, a brother, a friend, neighbor, who is suffering, or knows someone that's suffering from mental health. To me, I find it to be a cause that is so underfunded, and something that I ask myself all the time. Like, there is so many causes out there, and I do understand that, but I just find this one could use so much more. But we're still in the day of still not everybody being comfortable enough to talk about it. For me, I have zero shame, none whatsoever. There's nothing to be ashamed about. And if you don't come to the table, and if you don't tell people how you're feeling and what you're suffering from, how are you going to get the help that you need? Especially now with COVID. I mean, COVID has just made everything so much worse. And here we are with COVID, and let's say, I have no idea how long it's going to last, but when COVID's over, it doesn't mean that this mental health issues that people have developed is just going to go away. They're going to have to work on it. Hopefully with my gift, they'll get that help that they need, and it's just going to take time. I think I've almost gone through my speech. I think that the logo that they have, Healthy Minds Start with SickKids, I think is brilliant. I mean, that's why you hire and you get these advertising companies if someone in the hospital didn't come up with it on their own. And I'm sure everybody knows this is not my first donation, and it will not be my last, I can assure you of that. And I would also like to reach out to everybody, to all the fellow Canadians, to give to whatever cause that may be. Obviously, my preference would be mental health, and whatever anybody can give, whether it's $50 or $100 or whatever it may be, everything adds up. I mean, everything adds up. And I think I'm about done. I just would like to say, I guess, in closing, how excited that I am to myself that I've made the gift, to have the opportunity now to work with everybody so far that I've met with SickKids, and I'm sure that I'm going to meet a lot more. And I think it's going to be a great partnership. And again, looking very, very forward to it. And thank you to everybody for the speeches. Speeches were wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Well, Garry, we thank you for those wonderful remarks, and we do have a few more speakers that want to say some words. So I would like to invite Dr. Sunita Monga, who is the Associate Chief of Psychiatry at SickKids, and Dr. Stephen Miller, who is the head of the Division of Neurology and the Garry Hurvitz Center for Brain and Mental Health. So Garry, here are the leaders who are going to make all this happen. Stephen, Sunita.
There you go. On behalf of everyone at the Garry Hurvitz Center for Community Mental Health, I want to express our deepest gratitude to you, Mr. Hervitz. And I want to thank you for sharing your inspiring mental health journey and for sharing those words about breaking stigma against mental health. It's such an important message. Your incredible gift will transform the mental health care continuum, which extends from the hospital to the community and supports up to 63,000 mental health visits and contacts with patients and families per year. Thankfully, it arrives at a critical time for child and youth mental health. Over the last decade, we have seen a 61% increase in child and youth emergency department visits and a 60% increase in hospitalizations for mental health disorders across Canada. The number of parents who feel their child has a mental health challenge has increased threefold over the last few years, putting a tremendous strain on our community mental health agencies, where this rising demand for service has amplified the need to increase access to evidence-based treatments. The COVID-19 pandemic has added fuel to the fire and exposed existing fault lines in our mental health system. At SickKids, last year alone, emergency room consults for mental health were up 21% year over year. Mental health urgent care appointments were up 30%, and ambulatory referrals were up 25%. Rates of child and youth anxiety, depression, suicide, and eating disorders have risen since the beginning of the pandemic. Never before have the mental health needs of our children and youth been more important. Your awe-inspiring gift will be a catalyst for much-needed change. It will bring to life the SickKids mental health strategy launched just last year, allowing us to reimagine integrated care for patients with complex mental and physical health conditions. It will give us the resources to innovate new treatment models that will deliver improved outcomes in a more cost-effective way. And it will enable a transformation of community-based treatments where most child and youth mental health care happens. Investments in training, education, and a digital health information strategy will catapult our quality improvement and research efforts forward across SickKids and the 2 sites that make up the Garry Hurvitz Center for Community Mental Health. Sustainable, endowed operational support will give families the assurance that we will continue to be there when they need us most, while allowing us to think big and facilitate the adoption of evidence-based interventions on a wider scale. Most importantly, through Mr. Hervitz's generosity and our collective efforts, we will increase the likelihood that children and youth will become mentally healthy adults with enhanced capacity to navigate adversity, achieve their goals, and have healthy, productive lives. On behalf of our children, youth, and families, those served directly by SickKids, and those beyond our walls who will benefit from the advances we make together, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Wow, I mean, this is such an emotional day to be here with past and present center leaders. And Garry, thank you for your words, lifting brain and mental health and conditions out of the shadows. I'm so honored to be here today to express the gratitude of the 2,000 clinicians, researchers, and educators who come together to make up the newly named Garry Hurvitz Center for Brain and Mental Health. Our brains make us who we are, and we know that many brain and mental health disorders begin in childhood. Because of Garry Hurvitz's transformative gift, we now have the opportunity to better the trajectory of countless young lives as we strive to improve the full continuum of brain and mental health across the lifespan. Our world-leading children's hospital, SickKids, is the ideal place to tackle these issues and offers the greatest opportunity to promote a healthy brain across the lifespan. Founded in 2007, the center has been demonstrating the value of investing in the developing brain for over a decade. A virtual meeting place, the center assembles a critical mass of experts needed to tackle the brain's unparalleled complexity and some of the greatest remaining challenges in child and adult health. Guided by the vision that every child deserves a healthy start, a strong mind, and a bright future, we are already advancing new therapies for conditions that were previously thought unpreventable or untreatable. And this is unbelievable for me as a neurologist to witness these changes over these last years, and to know what we should expect in the next decade is really awe-inspiring. This investment is arriving at such an exciting moment in brain science, will be a catalyst for unprecedented transformation, and will inspire our next generation of brain and mental health leaders. To the young people listening today, there could not be a better time in history to invest your energies, your talent, and your passion to supporting the developing brain. Garry, your gift will move the center's tremendous potential into results, improved outcomes for children, youth, and families. With your support for bringing together cutting-edge research, skilled clinicians, world-class educational opportunities, we anticipate that within the next decade, we will be able to treat the untreatable, delivering new care strategies, therapies, and hope for currently incurable brain and mental health disorders. The seeds of these advances are already germinating here at SickKids. Garry, on behalf of everyone at the center, thank you for enabling these seeds to take root, to grow, and to flourish, helping to ensure that every child has a healthy start, a strong mind, and a bright future.
Thank you, Lauren. And Gary, to wrap it all up today, we have one of our patient ambassadors, Marlo, and her father, Declan, who are here to really bring greetings on behalf of all of the patients, past, present, and future, that this gift is going to enable. So, Marlo, Declan, please come and join us.
Good morning. It does feel like a lot of pressure to be up here after such inspirational comments and thinking about the future, what this gift means, Gary. We'll only, and if you could indulge us for just one more, if you don't mind.
Hi, my name is Marla and I'm 12 years old. I had a stroke when I was born and half of my brain was affected. I spent a lot of time in SickKids. I have cerebral palsy that affects my left side. Now I swim, dance, play basketball, and so much more. SickKids has always had my back and helped me so much and given me the support I need.
Thanks, sweetie. So while this is a morning of gratitude and one of incredible future opportunity, I have the same feeling this morning that I did over 12 years ago. A feeling of comfort, one of consolation, and one of relief. As nerve-wracking and exciting as it is to be a brand new father, learning about stroke is not one of the things I expected. And when an hours-old newborn was facing distress, and we got word that she was being transferred to SickKids Hospital, and what it was admittedly unexpected and stunning revelations that we had those feelings for the first time. While we didn't know the outcome, the feeling of relief and comfort that we were in the best place possible in the whole world for our daughter's health. After spending an overwhelming week in the neonatal intensive care unit, our learning journey began to understand what stroke means, to understand that the most common incidence for stroke is within a child's first moments of life. We started to engage terms, thanks to Dr. Miller and others, like neuroplasticity, that children's brains can rewire and find new pathways to do the things they need to do. We've been working closely with the hospital and their many clinics to understand and unravel the mysteries of stroke. And that work is ongoing. So whether it is building strength and flexibility in the face of cerebral palsy, whether it's participating in research studies and contributing what we've learned to the growing field of stroke research, and working with the SickKids Stroke Imaging Lab, whether it's responding and building confidence when we face a seizure for the first time in a decade, or how to understand and move past that perceived setback, or whether it's the ongoing work to monitor and track the psychosocial elements as my daughter manages to be a stellar, hardworking student, and of course all the social elements of growing up. But to us, it's a community of support that will help us navigate these waters that we're in today and be there for whatever comes next in our journey. The comfort of knowing that there is a world-class facility that has our backs means absolutely everything to us. And I think to Gary's comments, that's the brilliance of their tagline, that healthy minds start here. It starts, in my case, with an absolute newborn and a stroke victim to map the wonders of the brain and understand how it rewires and grows. To helping families with acquired brain injuries and kids who live with epilepsy, to assisting young people, as we've heard about this morning, with a range in the struggle of mental health issues like anxiety and depression. It is a journey of love, support, determination, and hard work. Because with brain and mental health challenges, sometimes the journey is long, and the barriers and the obstacles can be overwhelming and suffocating. But with the experts and the researchers at SickKids Hospital, we move down that path together, leading to better outcomes for kids, for families, and for our community.
This is a transformative gift to advance critical brain and mental health research, education, and care. Because of this amazing gift, I know that SickKids will always be there for me. On my behalf of all patients and families, thank you.
Go. Declan and Marlo, don't go too far. What we are going to do is provide you with a small token to commemorate this great day, Gary. So if we could bring it forward and maybe stand up here, we will let you provide it to Gary. As you can see, healthy minds start here. We thought it only fitting to put it on a t-shirt, given Gary's background. And we hope you find a place of pride for it. And just remember that we are also very, very grateful for this. So that brings today's proceedings to a close. I know that it's a little difficult to convey good wishes when we have to socially distance, but I'm sure Gary would love to hear from you in any way that he can. I want to thank you all for joining us today and for being part of this historic celebration. And once again, Gary, to you and your family, thank you for your incredible leadership and generosity. SickKids owes you a great debt, so thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.